we had to connect to the Wi-Fi, but we are now active. Can you guys hear? Let me know. If you guys can hear the stream, let me know. Because we are using a new microphone. Can you guys hear?
Amanda kind of put me on the spot. Yeah, I don't think she really thought it was going to happen, and then it was like she was already on her way from California. I said, Amanda, my sister's coming. There's no way. I said, how long is it?
No, I'm looking for...
Alright, cool. You guys can hear. Awesome.
How long is this? Probably
Good. Then I don't have to test it. Hopefully, some Wi-Fi is good.
Well, they won't be here after that. That's the Hampshire Coverage. You know, I mean, the place will empty right out. She had us all. Mark was here.
Stand on top and address that.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you. I need everyone to take at least 5 steps back. What about being out in the room? But the blue. So don't cross the blue line. That's for the press. But if you can file into those rooms, that would be great. I do need enough room for Andrew to speak and walk around. He will have a microphone, so you will be able to hear him. And if you have any questions, feel free to find anyone in a gang shirt or with a clipboard or me. So, thank you. I appreciate it.
So much for 5 steps back. Where's your blue line? Huh?
Okay, it's 12 minutes after. So I'm not going to get homophobic, and she asked me to crowd people that don't want to be crowded. And we're not
No! Anything for me?
No, I just want people to back up a little. I know it's hard because like they all want to do it, but you need to file in it. I tried.
Gotta back up.
Thank you. Okay.
Back up.
I need
Back
you
up,
to
please.
file into those rooms, please. I know it's not
Back
ideal,
up.
but I do need you to file into the rooms. I just can't step back. Sorry. People here. So if you can do that for me, that would be great. You will have a microphone like this side. So please go ahead and step into those rooms.
Sorry, excuse me. Actually, you're gonna try to keep the door free, okay? Actually, let's go this way, and we're gonna have to come along.
Hey, look who it is.
Oh my God! All right, so we're gonna go up and over. Actually, we're gonna have to start here.
why don't we just put it here?
Because they did this thing. But okay, hold on. Should we poll the people?
Yeah, you guys hold the people.
Okay, poll the people. Okay, good. So guys, for Keene office opening, do you want the Keene or? Hold on. Let's turn this around. Hold on. Let's take this around. Hell yeah! Can we do this here? I don't want people put time and effort for that, but this is. What do you guys think? Yeah. Yeah? You should put this somewhere else. Huh?
We can put this in the back. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's move it around. Let's move it to the back then?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright. Here we go. Oh, we take it to the back.
I don't even.
Here we go. Sorry, thank you guys.
Your hair is beautiful.
All right. Okay, cool. Can you also, thank you. I appreciate it. Can we? So Andrew will be right here. Are you guys okay if they put your coats outside? Anywhere you need. Okay. Anywhere.
You want me to put my bag in here?
As long as you're my.
Okay, I got Griffin children. Alright, I don't know where you thought it went.
Hey, Michael.
No, well, actually.
Oh.
Michael, they gotta move that stuff there. You get this.
Thank you. We're just putting it outside. Do you have valuables in there? Do you want to put it in my supply closet?
Possibly.
Okay, cool.
We're just going to be moving the coats in this corner out there. Do you have anything in it you want to grab before we move them?
Hey, how are you? Where are they coming in from?
Cool. Thank you.
They're gonna have to come in through there. I'm not sure if they're gonna come in from the front or not, but they'll have to come in through that door. Okay, got it. I believe.
Hey, Michael,
See,
want me to hold it? Okay.
Yeah, so he's coming in there.
Okay.
However, who are you with? Oh,
Times.
yeah.
Do you
Never mind.
need anything from here? Can I go do my thing?
Go do your thing. What do you want?
The gray lady.
What's that?
The gray lady.
Yeah.
Good on you, mate.
What's that?
Good on you. I've been up here over 20 years, and every Sunday I have to get the time.
I appreciate you paying my bills.
Well, you gotta hit the crossword puzzle, if nothing else.
Yeah, right. I'm always surprised at what kind of a cult following the crossword puzzles have. It's insane. I can never finish
Yeah,
one.
I'm not a cultist.
Yeah.
Trust me.
No, but people are really into
I'm
it.
not good enough.
Yeah.
I'll go grab Stevie. Give me 2 seconds.
How long you been with him?
I'm young, so it's like under 10 years. So I'm still considered a rookie by them, by their standards.
I used to work right around the corner down there. Was it still in the 40s? The low 40s?
Yeah. I mean, they moved from a smaller building to a bigger building right on the corner of 40th and 8th. So,
Okay, I was at 44th and Broadway.
Yeah. So just from the street.
Yeah.
I don't want to stand here and give you all the. I do not want your attention. Do not give it to me.
Yeah, but they're still going strong.
He's on his way. I got Christina and Steve here, which means they're close. Oh, that looks so good. Close. All right. I think this last one was in here.
Let's see if we can sneak our way over.
I did see.
Awesome. Yes.
I remember it was like 150 degrees out there.
Let's start pushing it back there. You want this sign up?
Yeah, that's
She's kind of freaking out because they were.
Yeah, no, we should put it behind us. That's fine up there.
So how is that? The other guy that used to
All right, so
Is there enough space?
yeah, it's been school over here. Here. Over there. This is over there, but hasn't had something online.
What does math mean? Is it mathematics? Is it abstract algebra? Analysis? Topology?
Stay here. So I would say we just definitely move that one here.
Oh my goodness. This is not a Yankee.
How are you?
Hi.
All right, I need a quick.
This is going to be complicated. Are any of you interested in canvassing with us this week? Or in the month of January?
I'm out of town.
All right.
You guys are ready for a mic. I'll be right over there with 1.5 one for a audience. If he's feeling it, very Q&A, so that there's no more giving out his mic.
Thank you. And you're right. Yeah, we're gonna try
Great, great. Thank you.
Cool. I'm glad they said something. That's great. Thanks for coming. Sure. You wasn't sure. He's glad to have some. Oh, yeah?
One sec, we gotta go.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? At least there's a lot less controversy with this being the one that I shot 4 years ago. We've always posted up
Want me a 6?
This is like
those are digital.
I'm like, meanwhile, just like tweeting like a madman.
How about yourself?
Well, next week is going to be big news about like this show.
There's a handful of staffers. And like amongst the handful, there's like I'd say a third of them are kind of like.
there's nobody in that one.
Oh, Mark Clock. Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah,
We have so many people.
I'm like usually following it. I'd say like 98% of my.
But I'm glad.
Yeah. But you know, it's like our things like you have the same workload as the staffer and the competitors, right?
They arrive. Actually, I need my phone.
Yeah. How's it at which chamber is it? How about instead of Wow. Not a lot of you guys left.
I've got a lot. Last night,
Not a lot of you guys left. Yeah. It seems like all the
No, he's good. The guy's name is Will.
Is it family or is it
Well, yeah, right. This is good. Okay. So there's that. We checked it real quick, and I think it's 5:30. Okay. Start doing this. So many people. So many people.
What's your name again? Chris. Nice to meet you. My name's Christopher Lee, so everyone's like, yeah, I know. Lee. Yeah. He was the original cinematic director.
Like
Sir Christopher Lee. He was knighted, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if
I don't have gear.
I guess over there, sales. Check it out. Yeah, I think he was like the original.
Oh, no, media sites. I mean, we're in family.
Oh, okay. Who are you with?
Probably.
Okay, got it.
I don't know how you're going to do it without coming off this.
I mean, technically we're supposed to cover all of London County, so all the way up to London area. It's absurd. Yeah, but that's like
Yeah. It takes an hour to get to Wardsboro from Brown.
Mark, great question. Did you drive here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm from Nashville. We're gonna probably go visit Maria, and then we're gonna be at the event tomorrow in what is it, Rochester? Or Manchester? No, it's Manchester area. Regardless, we're gonna be there tomorrow. So.
I locked my keys in my car.
Like just now?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I just figured that out.
We'll see if we can help you out. Yeah.
I have like AAA.
Uh-huh.
So it took them like 45 minutes to break in.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh, geez. Best of luck with that, man. I'm gonna try to get some air or something here.
Or Maddie?
Took them 45 minutes here? Or you do it once before? Oh, they're pretty good here. Yeah.
My car was specifically.
Okay. What kind is it? The trucks come out of a place that's primarily a Subaru place, but not an official.
Alright guys, so at this point we're just waiting for Andrew Yang to reply.
That looks more of like most of my assignments are being Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I shot something in Lake Charles, Louisiana, a few weeks back. Most of it was on 180. And I went, trying to call up people you guys rush this interview from Rush. But I was here for like, I would say a week, like one scam, right? And I realized that it took a shorter amount of time, but also was more economical for me to overnight it to New York. Oh wow! Turn it around in 24 hours instead of digital files. So it's like, yeah, I guess.
Oh! Hi. I've got bad news. I'm not going to be the person that says that he's here. We do not. Whoever just said that. If it is possible to squeeze some more people into the rooms so that we can squeeze more people into this room, that would be awesome. Thank you. Also, if you want to sign up for canvassing or phone banking in this area, let me know. All right. Awesome. As you were, I think. Unless you have a nice. Okay. Didn't want to be that guy.
No, that's good. You're good.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much when we're ready, I'm ready.
Are you really gonna come for your
Yang? What?
Are you really gonna come for your stuff right now? I'm keeping it.
No. And did you see what I've just put up? Bro, did you? Oh my god. Huh? What?
My keys in my car.
Just now? Oh no. Okay, do you have AAA?
Yeah. Okay. It's really hard to get into my car. Last time I did this, it took like 45 minutes.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
Well, it's better than not, you know, yeah.
You got Yang's from?
No.
Yeah. Hey, look at that. That was a great way to do it.
Like, I don't care who it is. I would do it if I could. I just need to do it.
Are you like streaming this or doing any media stuff? Right there, streaming right now.
So I need
On the Zach and Matt show. I gotta get on Yang's stream right now.
Good to see you guys again. Long time no see. Hello.
Hello.
Is it just Zach and Matt show though, or are you like recording something too?
We're
trying to get
it will be recording
before in person. We're trying to get people to see Yang before in person to step out. So some of the Yang curious and undecided who haven't seen it before.
Okay. No, I'm maybe
Like we're at capacity.
Oh yeah.
So we're trying to get people.
I'm about to
like,
stay right here.
I slept at 5:30. Alright. I slept like 5 hours or so. And then, but then got out the gates running, you know. Yeah.
Horses out the gates. We were ready. But I didn't wake up until 2.
Right. I have a number of jobs tonight, and one of them is to warm you up.
Yes. Did it last night.
That's right. It's already pretty hot in here, so I don't think that's going to be too difficult. So let's try that out. I want to try this again. How are you all doing tonight? Good, good, good. All right. My name's Steve Marchand. If you like state and local politics, that puts you in an exclusive class. And it means we may have crossed paths. I used to be the mayor of Portsmouth. I'm a Manchester kid who still lives on the seacoast. Some of you may also know me as a 2018 gubernatorial candidate.
Yeah.
Breaking news, I did not win. What are we doing? If I had, I would have intimidating bodyguards with me. I would appear much less approachable. And so there are some silver linings. Let me tell you one of the silver linings is that I had some free time in January of 2019 that I would not have otherwise had. I would have been helping make New Hampshire better than it is right now. I got to spend the evening of January 11th, 2019 with a guy I'd heard of, hadn't met, and frankly didn't know that much about, Andrew Yang. You've heard of him. All right, I like that, I like that. We got coffee, mutual friend said, could you sit down with this guy? He's running for president. And he's trying to make friends. That's sort of what running for president's about when you boil it down. So we spent an hour together, and about 5 minutes in, I realized that we were going to be friends. I didn't know if he was going to be my candidate, but I knew we were going to be friends. Why? Well, this guy, 44-year-old, first-generation American, father of 2, really likes math. Holy crap, that's me. That's me. And I realized we had that going. And then we continued the conversation, and I quickly realized that although he was not nearly as well known as virtually anybody else that was running for president, I mean, at that moment, anybody else running for president, he had ideas that I had not heard of that were unbelievably well thought out. And he was communicating in ways that no other candidate in this cycle or in any other recent cycle had done in a way that connected with me. And I realized even back then, I felt like if he had the opportunity to get the platform to communicate to a broader set of Americans, he could connect with them in a way that would do what I think needs to be done in the days in which we live. Now, I'm just going to check, and by the way, if you voted for Donald Trump in 2016,
we still love you.
We love you because you're here right now. Ladies and gentlemen, are we cool with Trump voters in 2016?
Yes! Americans!
We need to be, because we need to come together, and we're not going to do it by just sort of closing in our ranks. So a big part of this is, how are we going to expand into a durable coalition that can do more than just win the election? Because that's good, but that's not enough. How will you govern in a way that can allow transformational change to occur? I'm going to back up for a second, in part because I have a lot of time to kill.
More than 2 minutes?
No, well, let me tell you how much time I got to kill. No, it may not be that bad. 2 nights ago, I was introducing him in Exeter. I generally introduce him. He was running behind. Like, behind. He said he's 10 minutes away. So I got like a 10-minute version of this stuff, you know? And about 12 minutes in, the guy in the back goes, that's 5 more minutes. So now I got like a 5-minute version that's got to be different enough from the first 12 minutes that you don't think I'm doing what I'm going to do later tonight. And then they said 5 more. 32 minutes later, he showed up. The candidate's not supposed to speak for 32 minutes. This is not optimal. So 10 minutes was 32 minutes. Earlier today, 10 minutes was 22 minutes. Now that's positive, that's progress right there. But I am told he's probably 5 to 7 minutes away at this point. Here's where we're at as a country. This is going to sound grandiose, but I believe it to be true. Every 40 years or so in the history of this country, transformational change occurs. And typically we as Americans do not realize it is about to occur until it is upon us. So it was Abraham Lincoln, and it was Teddy Roosevelt, and it was FDR, and it was Ronald Reagan. You may like the transformation that occurs, you may dislike the transformation that occurs, but it will occur. And we need to refresh every 30 to 40 years as a country. And when it happens, it will last for a generation or more. And what happens immediately before that transformation is we often see transitional political figures. And sometimes they can be mistaken for transformational. So, an example. After Watergate, Jimmy Carter, an ex-governor of a small state that his nickname was Jimmy Who, an ex-peanut farmer, wins the presidency by a hair over the vice president who wasn't elected, who became the president, who almost beat Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford. So what happens? People thought he was... Sorry? Okay, well, what the hell is it?
Okay, how many minutes?
So what was I telling you about Exeter? No. Some people thought Jimmy Carter was a transformational figure, but with the definition of what a president could be at a messy moment in American history. And it turns out 4 years later, Ronald Reagan, and I'm guessing some of you, if you're in this room, probably were not huge Reagan fans. If you were, God bless you, you're here now. But many of you probably were not. But whether you like it or not, he was a transformational figure, and he defined the next 30 to 40 years of American political history. He is a deity among many Republicans until the last few years. Think about what's happened in the last few years. The coalition, that Reagan revolution, that Reagan coalition, fiscal conservatives, national security, social conservatives, that coalition wasn't just enough to get Republicans back in the White House. It ended up being enough to largely dominate the next 35 years, not just of the Congress and of the presidency, but also of what they call the Overton window. What we were allowed to talk about as a country. It was shifted to the right in a way that was unimaginable for large parts of the 20th century. That's what I mean by transformation. It's a really big deal, and it lasts for a really long time. But every time it happens, it becomes tired eventually. And the coalitions that allow it to be durable, that allow presidents to win like 42 states or 49 states, they go away. And while we're figuring out what we want to be as a country for the next 40 years, you get some unusual results. So, follow me when I say this. The Jimmy Carter, in a way, of our time, maybe Donald Trump. Now, Jimmy Carter and Donald Trump had nothing in common, right? One gets all the evangelical vote, but the other one's a real Christian. All right? That's what it's very odd. But Donald Trump, I gotta believe, as a first-generation American, a born and bred New Hampshireite, and somebody who loves the country like all of you do, I have to believe that what Donald Trump is selling to the American people is not transformation. It does not represent what the next 40 years of America is going to look like. It does not represent the best of America. The next transformational moment, whoever that president is, in whichever party that president comes from, will be somebody that has to represent the best of what we can be and not the worst of what we have been. And right now, unfortunately, the dialogue in our national political conversation is too much about looking backwards and thinking that there are things that we've been running away from because we think we can be better, that maybe in the spirit of fear, we're kind of running back towards again. That's transition. That is not transformation. And so that brings us to this election. You may be the only people in this room that have not decided to run for president as a Democrat in 2020, right? Unless John Delaney's here. That's if he's here, we welcome him too, right? There are a lot of people running. Before I make the following statement, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Number one, how many of you here would call yourself already Yankee? Hey. Very nice. How many of you here, and we're all among friends, so there's no wrong answer, except for if you raise your hand for both, that'd be pretty weird. How many of you would say, I'm not Yanking yet, you know, I like that pain, I'm not Yanking yet, but I'm Yang curious. Some Yang curiosity here? Right? Yes. Is there anybody here who thought they were at a Joe Biden event and it's too late to do? That's cool too, we'll get you there, we'll get you in. All right, so we have another term for Yang curious. It's soon to be Yang Gang. That's another term that we use that's synonymous with that. All right? There are a lot of people running for president. I respect them all, and I believe we have to support the nominee given the stakes in November of 2020. And Andrew, by the way, has said the exact same thing. He will help in any way, but he's in it to win it. And when you see the fundraising totals in a couple of days, you'll realize he is in it because he can win it. And indeed, I think Andrew is going to be the next president of the United States of America. Do you feel on that? That's good. But there are a number of people running for president that are making the following argument. The way that we're going to beat Donald Trump is by being safe.
No.
Be comfortable. Don't go too far. Don't go far to the left. Let's occupy the center. Let's kind of blur the differences. What we can't afford to be is scary. We must be comfortable. Let's bring the country back to a few years ago when they liked us better. Here's the problem. There's no going back. The reason why Donald Trump got elected afraid of what the trajectory was doing and where it was going and what it would mean for people like them. I think the irony is that the candidates often described as the safest in terms of trying to beat Donald Trump are actually the riskiest.
Yes. Yep.
The candidates that we think will make it the easiest just to win Michigan back. Right? If your definition of bringing it home is, you know what, we can get the 51% in Wisconsin. That's how we're going to win the White House. Man, you are leaving yourself zilcho margin for error. I want a presidential candidate who can win back Michigan, who can take back Ohio and Pennsylvania, can bring Iowa back into play and so forth. But I want a presidential candidate, a nominee, who can do what Ronald Reagan did in 1980. He won 42 states after Democrats in the House and in a lot of elections had been rocking it out. Going back to JFK and LBJ, he changed the map with a message that was transformative in nature. Like, I want a Democratic nominee that says Arizona and Georgia are where we're going to play, not Michigan. We're taking Michigan. Now we're gonna take what's mine is mine, and what's yours we're going to discuss. We're going to change the game. We're going to change the map. That's how you create a big enough, durable coalition that you actually get working majorities in the House and in the Senate and in the legislative level back in the states and governors and so forth that allow you to go big and to make big things happen, and then for it to last for a generation. So after I signed on with Andrew around April 1st, I got to go down to New York and introduce him at Washington Square Park. Thousands of people showed up on a rainy day in early May. It was exciting. And for this New Hampshire kid to be down there in Lower Manhattan to introduce Andrew and to see what I saw was very exciting. Thousands of people, disproportionately young, disproportionately people of color, people that in New Hampshire, frankly, you don't get a lot of young people, or frankly, people of color. That's changing, and that's a great thing, but New Hampshire. And by the way, I will say, even here in New Hampshire, I'm seeing more youth in our Andrew Yang events. I'm seeing more diversity, ethnic, racial, LGBTQ. It's an exciting peek into what the future of New Hampshire and the country and a Democratic winning coalition can look like. So I see this crowd, it's young and it's jacked up, and it looks like the future of America. They want a candidate who represents the future of America. Now, one of those people near the front row was a guy, a white guy, middle-aged white guy, and he had a t-shirt that said, "Make America Great Again." And I went down after the event, and I found him. And I'm like, you understand that you just attended a rally with a young Asian man who wants to give everybody $1,000 a month. Were you at the correct event? And he said, "Hells yeah, I'm at the correct event." I'm like, "Tell me why you're at the correct event." He said, "Here's the thing I've learned after 2.5 years of Donald Trump, as somebody who was a vigorous supporter of Donald Trump in 2016. He says, it turns out that Donald Trump was the wrong answer to the right question. And Andrew Yang, it turns out, is the right answer to the right question." So I know what you're thinking. What the hell is the right question? Here's the right question. How come at a time when we're getting told stock market, record high, GDP, record high, unemployment, record low, inflation, record low, we've been told, any economics 101 class, people have been telling us that as long as most or all of these indicators are going in the right direction, It would suggest that there's broad prosperity, that you're doing better than you've ever done before, that you're doing better than your parents were doing, and it almost ensures that your children will do better than you have. That's what we call, in effect, the American dream. Here's the problem. Those data points are largely disconnected from the reality of Americans' economic situation. The guy said, how come all 4 and other data points like this are what they are, and yet he said 70, 80, 90% of the people that I know are basically walking on a tightrope, an economic tightrope, with no net underneath. And that explains a lot of things. And Andrew will get at this at length when he's here for breakfast tomorrow morning. That was a dry attempt at humor that did not go well. Because you believe that might be true. It's not. He'll be here soon. The young parents are like, that better not be true. I got my kids here. All right. And school, you do have school tomorrow.
No school.
No, you don't have school here tomorrow?
No school.
Well, my kids are in the wrong school district. They have school tomorrow. Don't tell them. They will want to move to Keene tonight. The economic anxiety that led people to go, the idea that the pitch that's going to get us the White House in 2020 is if we go to people who have been there already. Longtime senators, members of Congress, people who've served in Washington for a long time. You know, the old definition of insanity, when you do the same thing over and over again and you expect a different result the next time. Well, for 20, 30, 40 years, people have been working in manufacturing in the Midwest or retail in the Southeast or truck drivers in the Midwest. These are folks that have been told, whether it was Republican or Democrat, whatever senator or congressperson or ex-governor it was, I keep being willing to make the change. America is kind of almost like an old rickety wooden roller coaster. We've been kind of careening side to side during the course of my lifetime. I was born 7 months before Richard Nixon resigned. So my entire life is the Watergate, post-Watergate era. All right? And think about what the American people have been willing to try out of desperation, increasing desperation. They went from to an ex-actor who was a conservative ideologue, to the blue blood vice president of the conservative ideologue, to a small state southern governor again who had a lot of personal problems but had charisma on loan from who knows where, to the son of the blue blood vice president, to Barack Hussein Obama, to Donald J. Trump. If you can identify the thread, the common pattern there, good luck. You should be a political scientist at this point. Here's the thread, to the extent there is one. As we go from Watergate to now, do you think that the American people seem to be looking for more comfort, more safety? Do you think that they're going to say that the response to Donald Trump is to, instead of careening from Carter to Reagan to Bush to Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump, the opposite of an outsider who doesn't have his act together, Donald Trump, is not an insider. It's an outsider who does have their act together. That's what the American people are telling us, whether we find that a comforting thing or not. That it is clear that is the behavior, that is the electoral behavior of the last 40 plus years. So now I ask you, look at the candidates with a chance at being the nominee, because what was once 25 is, as a practical matter, well into the single digits now. How many of those candidates can reasonably be described as the outsider who can claim to be every bit as much, if not more, of an outsider as Donald Trump? It can't be somebody who served in Washington. People think that if you've served in Washington, if you have not served in Washington, it's a bug. This just in, it's a feature. It is a feature. People are looking for folks that are going to come in and do something different, because what they have been trying for the last couple generations has not worked. So I bring you to Andrew Yang. Let me ask you this. If you're here tonight, whether you are already full-fledged Andrew Yang or you're just that Yang curious person I talked about, tell me something about him that draws you to him.
He's funny.
He's funny.
We relate to him.
He's relatable.
He's got a plan for everything.
He's got a plan for everything.
He doesn't judge you.
I'm sorry?
Empathy.
Empathy. I want to go back to that. I like that a lot.
Rational.
Say it loud.
Data-driven.
He is data-driven.
He's the only one
talking about the real problems that are facing us in the future?
That comes up a lot.
The only one that understands them even out of the candidates.
The only one that's good at math.
The only one from the mouths of babes, baby. That's it.
Yeah.
Future.
You got more on the line than any of us, pretty much, in this room.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And you got the right hat, and you got the right shirt. There's the wisdom. There's the wisdom. Look, it is frustrating. The story of Andrew Yang is one that said, I did not plan on running for president because I am not insane. Remember, he said that as his last closing statement, I believe. This is not somebody who's been planning to run for president, which ironically is kind of one of the best things about him running for president. It's because he has a life well lived that touches a lot of different parts of the American experience. He himself, the son of immigrants. His dad, for example, has over 60 patents. This is somebody who grew up, his dad did, on a dirt floor in Asia. They come over here and they make it happen. And he and his mom, their family, are a great representation of what the American dream can be. About the power, the positive power of immigration. What better representation of the pushback on this anti-immigrant sort of storyline that Donald Trump has been telling that did help propel him to the White House, than to have somebody who himself is the son of immigrants and can tell that story in an authentic way. I'm a son of immigrants myself, and for me, it was a compelling part of what got me with Andrew Yang at an early age. I think it is a powerful part of the story we need to tell as Americans and to tell the world that what Donald Trump is peddling about anti-immigration rhetoric is not who we've been, it's not who we are, and when Andrew Yang is president, it will not be who we're going to be. That's a really important message to tell the world. It's also somebody who believes in the positive power of entrepreneurship. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm a proud lifelong Democrat. But I do think that we need to be careful that we do not, as a party, come across as the party that is against small business, that is against entrepreneurship, that is against innovation. We're the party of science. At our best, we're the ones that have the intellectual curiosity to be willing to ask difficult questions and sometimes not be sure what the answer is going to be, but allow the data to take you to the promised land. I think that's one of the things that drew me to Andrew as well. This is not a guy who at 18 years old was dreaming of universal basic income, right? It was the result of a process. It was the result of understanding what somebody back here said a little while ago. One of the only candidate talking about the actual problems facing the country. We cannot simply be against things as a party. When you boil it down, I would argue that Andrew Yang's fundamentally greatest strength is that more than any candidate in the field in this cycle, and perhaps more than I've seen in quite some time, he is defining the future of America. He is defining his candidacy. He is defining this nomination process as being four things. 4 years ago, we kind of in the general election ran a campaign based largely on being against something. And what was that? Not Trump. When Donald Trump said, I'm going to make America great again, what was our general response?
America's already great.
America's already great.
Is it though?
And it didn't work. Education. When we see, and Andrew says it better than anybody, $20 to $30 billion a year of Amazon type sucking up out of the brick and mortar of retail into the digital cloud, when we see that happening, we see thousands and thousands of jobs a week net being lost in retail. So what's the answer that we as a party should have for the 39-year-old woman with a high school degree making $9.50 an hour? America's already great. 30% of malls are going to close in this country in the next 5 years. America's already great. Not for that 39-year-old woman. The median truck driver in this country is a 49-year-old man. 94% of truck drivers in this country are male. The median is a 49-year-old white guy with a high school degree. And he's making about $59,000 a year, which is pretty good money in most of the country for that level of education and that age. As you know, if you've heard Andrew ever before, there's a lot of money to be made in automating those jobs away. Well over $100 billion a year in efficiencies and savings in automating those jobs away. Millions of jobs net at the end of the process. And that's not just the truck drivers. It's the folks that serve the meals, it's the folks that have the hotel rooms that no longer will be needed because you don't need to feed or help rest a truck driver. These are some of the people that turned to Donald Trump in 2016. And so the irony is there's this debate in the Democratic Party. What is the message that's going to get us the win? Should we activate the base, or should we communicate to people who peeled off and voted for Trump? As if you have to pick. Well, if your message is insufficient, if you're not identifying the correct problem, then yeah, you are going to have to pick what focus group messaging is going to get you to 51%, or maybe 47%. But Andrew is the only candidate who understands, who's identified that it's actually the same message that applies to the Trump voter from Ohio and the progressive Democrat who is voting for the first time and is energized and excited. We lost 4 million manufacturing jobs because of automation, not because of anything about that. But the people on the ground who were losing their jobs in the industrial Midwest and other places, they're the ones that knew it. And their BS detector was on. And when they heard candidates saying, it's not automation at all. We have candidates in this field right now who I respect very much in a lot of ways. Very sharp people with sharp histories, academic, political, and so forth, who are saying that automation is not a significant part of the challenge we face that we're describing tonight. And that's just not true. It is a big part of it. And I think part of the reason why these other candidates are reluctant to get into it is because now you're playing on Andrew Yang's turf. The few times that other candidates in these debates will directly engage Andrew Yang, Senator Warren did this a couple of debates ago when there was an extended conversation about universal basic income and the role of automation. Andrew threw it down on that debate. We talk to people every day who were supporters of Senator Warren, who understand that, like her, we agree that wealth is getting concentrated because of the system at the top, but that also understand that the Western European countries, North America and Asia, who have put in a wealth tax as a means of trying to deal with this structural problem, have eventually repealed it because it doesn't get you the revenue it needs. It doesn't address the problem. The end is worthy. The means do not get it done. And so what do most of those countries do once they realize that the wealth tax doesn't get you to the promised land? A ton of countries that are the most similar to ours in terms of the structure of their economy have already done. Right? Why would we make the same mistake as all those countries in Europe, North America, and Asia? And so what we find out is that a value-added tax at half the rate of the average of all the countries that have it generates the lion's share of the revenue to pay for universal basic income. Now, some folks will say universal basic income is a Trojan horse, a libertarian Trojan horse, trying to starve the beast. And some folks will tell you the problem with the VAT is that it's regressive. It's kind of like a sales tax in some ways. But the magic, and it's part of what got me turned on Andrew, he was the first major political candidate I had seen who understood that the combination of a VAT would actually get the money from Amazon, and get the money from Facebook, and get the money from Google. And when you combine it with the universal basic income, it turns out the bottom 94% of Americans come out ahead. They get way more in the freedom dividend, the $12,000 a year per person, than they would pay in the value-added tax, regardless of the exact structure of it. Now, tell me, if you're worried, how many people here are worried about wealth getting concentrated at the top in this economy? You should be. How many folks here think that compared to a generation or two ago, educational opportunity, the gap between the haves and have-nots and educational access has widened compared to 40 years ago? How about income inequality? How about wealth inequality? How about opportunity in general? Across the board, this is at the core of the problem. There are fewer and fewer people that are coming out ahead on the deal. And the economy, as automation is wiping out jobs on the side, is giving a smaller number of enormous winners and a very large number of people that are losing in this economy. So when we talk to voters who increasingly are coming to our events and who thought that they knew who they were going to vote for, they thought they were going to go safe, and maybe it was going to be Joe Biden or Amy Klobuchar. They thought they wanted to go progressive, and they were going to go Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. They thought they wanted somebody that was an outsider and relatively young, and they were looking at Mayor Buttigieg. They all start coming to our events because you don't have to choose. Do you want a young outsider? You got it. Do you want diversity? You got that. Do you want somebody that can talk about, listen, I'll give you one thing, Donald Trump is ahead of Andrew Yang on the business community. All right? Donald Trump is ahead of Andrew Yang on bankruptcies 7-0. 7-0. The other thing I'll tell you is, neither of them are billionaires. One of them will admit it. All right. I may use that one again sometime. I'll tell Andrew you like that. Okay? That's pretty good. What are Donald Trump's greatest strengths entering this process, the general election? What is the greatest, whether you like him or not, and you probably don't, what's his greatest strength electorally?
If you said none of are millionaires, if Yanks give me $1,000 a month, then he is a millionaire for a year, because then he has a lot of money, because he has probably over $1 million.
I don't know how much of that you caught. I have one question for you. Are you 35 years old? Because you can't run for president until you're 35. But as soon as you are 35, I got a feeling you're going to be running for president. No pressure. There you go. Donald Trump's greatest asset in the general election is this. Despite being president for 3 years, he still is an outsider. He's the bomb thrower. This is why he got elected. It's part of the reason his approval rating actually isn't that different from the day he got elected president. If y'all think this is going to be pretty easy, nope. If we don't get the right nominee, I'm going to work like hell for the nominee. I don't care who it is, but I'm telling you, I'd like to work like hell for somebody who's got the best chance of winning the general election. I mean, that's what it's about. You got to do better than just say, I'm going to try no matter what. This is the time when we figure out no matter what isn't good enough. You get the best you can get.
Yes.
Imagine running a failed business person versus a successful business person. Imagine getting somebody who's in his mid-70s versus somebody in his mid-40s. Imagine somebody who is orange versus, and I'm telling you, the first major Asian American male candidate in the history of presidential campaigns. What's the fastest growing non-white population in America? I kind of gave you a leading question there, I suppose. But here's what's crazy from a purely electoral standpoint, and it's one of those things I considered before signing on. So the fastest growing non-white population in the country are Asian Americans. And what we find is that the Democratic Party has traditionally been spending turnout resources on people of color, but traditionally African American and Latino, which is awesome. And we've seen tremendous excitement from those parts of the American population. But we have not done the same thing with Asian Americans. Now, one other fact. Asian Americans on the median have higher income and higher educational attainment than any other group in the country. And what we know from political science is that people who tend to have higher income and higher educational attainment also tend to vote at higher levels. This is a fact, regardless of your background. But Asian Americans, because there's been little to no emphasis on creating excitement and driving turnout, have actually seen lower than expected turnout in elections. And Asian Americans voted for Hillary Clinton 2-1 over Donald Trump in 2016. Now, I just gave you a lot of math. Where should we be investing resources and generating excitement to maximize turnout to get more votes to win more elections? The math is obvious, and I have seen it myself in all of these events. Andrew gets the most diverse ideologically as well as ethnically and racially groups that I have ever seen, even in New Hampshire. And so there's this very practical argument as well that I think is really important when it comes to Andrew's candidacy. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at what time it is. Okay. Anybody hungry?
Yes.
It's too bad. No, I don't have any food on me. I know he's really close. Let me get a quick update. Do we have an ETA? Anybody?
I got nothing.
His Twitter account said they got. Is he in a big bus?
Speeding ticket. Yeah.
Wait, his Twitter account says he got a speeding ticket? Come on, guys. You know this guy's beating Donald Trump. Right?
We were going to show you, but we didn't know.
Well, that's okay. Hey, what's his ETA now? 5 minutes? Ish? Did he get another speeding ticket?
I do not think so. No.
All right. All right, guys. I'm working.
Speeding ticket.
I'm working.
A 20-minute delay. Speeding ticket.
I really don't have a lot to do with Joe. Yeah. You gotta go up, right? I'll take some questions. Ask me anything you want. Yes, sir. I am not deciding if I'm running for governor again until after Andrew Yang is done. When he's president, I will not be running for governor because I'll be helping him. Another question. Anything you want. Really? Are you trying to save them for Andrew?
You got one here.
Yes, sir.
Is that the same stand from last time?
I'm sorry?
Is that the same stand from last time?
Oh, you mean this? Oh, okay. This actually is, it looks the same, but it's a different one every time. Yeah. Well, we use this so that you can be seen.
Yeah, that's a waste if you're gonna buy the exact same thing.
Wow. All right, there's some more math. I like that. Don't worry, we got a few in different offices. Okay. All right, give me something else. Yeah.
Is he okay with Patriots fans?
Oh, okay. Good question. If you look back on Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I talk trash as a lifelong Patriots fan. He is a Jets fan. Hold on, whoa, it's worse, it's worse. Their national campaign manager, who I believe will be with them, Zach, who's awesome, wonderful guy, lifelong Bills fan.
I figures.
Yeah. So I talk a lot of trash, and I am glad that he will not be in town this Saturday night at 8 o'clock, because that campaign event would be unsuccessful. And by the way, though, the next weekend, when we win and we go to the divisional round at Kansas City, we are in town. So when we win, when we beat Tennessee, which we will, and then we play at Kansas City, and by the way, my wife is from Kansas City. After the AFC Championship game last year, that was what you call tumult. All right? She got her Mahomes, and I digress. But that will be during a visit because he will be back from January 8th to the 12th. 5 days, full days, long days, much bigger rooms than this, and I'm going to put a little more space between the events so we can get here on time. But one of them will probably be during the game, and as soon as I know the time of the game, we will probably change the event to reflect your ability to watch the game while you hang out with Andrew. So ETA on that one. All right. And see, that's the kind of stuff you're getting live. Anything else? Anything? Really?
When's he coming?
The big question, when's he going to be here? Less than 5 minutes.
Really?
That's what they just told me.
Where does he go from?
I'm sorry?
Do you trust that?
I trust, do I trust him?
The person who told you.
Yeah, I trust him. I trust him. Okay. Is there a window that could be opened? Can we open those windows? They
Yeah,
are
I feel a
open?
breeze. Yeah, I feel a breeze.
Just crouch. There's not a
Yeah. Wait, what kind of truck is it?
Big long truck and it's got his.
Oh yeah,
Fred's here.
Fred's here.
Oh yeah, that's Fred. Right? And you're like, what? Like the Fred?
Of course.
Yeah. Fred the Felon, if you follow him on Twitter. Oh, well, Fred's got a following. And by the way, I believe every part of that name is factually accurate.
Yes.
Steve.
Yeah.
As long as it's alliteration.
Yeah, somebody.
What's your favorite quality of Andrew's?
What's my favorite quality of Andrew? You know, he's relatively mild-mannered, and yet I would probably say it's a combination of it's authenticity, but that's almost too easy. Right?
That's his.
Every candidate's like, oh, so authentic.
Yeah, they're really not though.
He's fearless. He's fearless.
That's his.
Oh no, this is
Yours
mine.
on
That's
the-
his right
yours on
there.
the card.
Yep.
Okay.
He's fearless. He understands, for example, that going on a candidacy of a freedom dividend from the beginning of the process, that is not the easiest road. That is not conventional. It's easy to get criticized when you're trying something very new and different. But I love that he was willing to, and he decided to run for president because he didn't think any other candidate that was running or thinking about running in either party was willing to address the problems that actually were the symptoms and the causes that led to Donald Trump getting elected and that are leading to this division that's just increasing in the country. And so when he realized there was nobody that was going to run that was going to do it, he went home and he said, challenge accepted. And he did it. That's remarkable. I mean, this is really hard. I've not run for president, but I have run for governor and I have been a mayor. This is really hard. It's hard on you. It's even harder on your family. I mean, your spouse, your kids, you don't see them very much. It's painful. You're not making money while you're running for office. You're losing money while you're running for office. It is, you get criticized. It is much easier to criticize somebody for an idea. There are many more letters to the editor criticizing than there are praising. People have to really go out of their way to praise. And so you got to have a really thick skin to run for higher office. And this is somebody who's never run for anything before. So there's a fearlessness to him that I find so appealing. It's a big part of what I love about him. And I also think it's what will make him a great president. Because if you're going to deal with really big problems, you're going to need to be willing to be really candid, and you're going to have to offer really big solutions. And you're going to have to be fearless in the process of doing that. It's just really easy to fall back on old things, but it's some of the old things that got us into the problems that we're in right now. Yes?
What's Andrew's stance on putting funding behind like a national community-based enrichment programs? Things like food, mental health, drug addiction, homelessness, programs that actually, heal some of the fractures. The capitalism we have as it is, things are just going to continue to get worse. Well, so what's his stance on funding those programs?
Well, look, there's a reason he's a lifelong Democrat, and at the risk of oversimplifying the kind of the headline of your question, the public sector, government at the local, the county, state, federal level can be a positive force for good. Now that sounds like a pretty uncontroversial statement. But again, I would argue as part of the Reagan Revolution, for much of the last 40 years, one of the two major parties basically has as dogma, as a central operating principle of its existence, that government is bad at any time, at any level, that is incapable of being helpful, it's incapable of making us fairer or freer. And if one of the two voices politically in the country start that way, that Overton window I described earlier about what we're allowed to talk about as a country has shifted dramatically to the right, and it still is in many ways. And so Andrew is somebody who believes that government can be a positive and powerful force for good. And so when we talk about how we pay, for example, for the freedom dividend, it's often an oversimplified form of it, the value-added tax. But there are other things too, like here's an example. He believes that we should eliminate the earnings cap on Social Security.
Yep.
Now, I don't know how many are familiar with that. Basically, it's adjusted a little every year. A little under $120,000 of your income a year are subject to the tax that goes towards funding Social Security. All right? But once you hit that number, I think it's about 118 grand this year, you no longer pay that portion of your taxes. And that means that the amount of Social Security tax that you pay if you make 118,000 or 118 million a year is the same. Here's the reality. Social Security is arguably the most successful program, federal program in the history of the country. It is successful in part because it has done what it was supposed to do, dramatically lower older age poverty. From the majority of older age Americans living in poverty before the program to roughly 1 out of 7. Still too many, but a dramatic and durable success. But when Social Security was created, what? Anyway, when it was created, it was supposed to do things it doesn't do anymore. He wants to deal with it. Thank God, people. I thank you so much for being here. Okay, and this is where what I do is I wind up. And I thank you profusely, because you get to finally stop hearing me and start hearing the next President of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Andrew Yang.
Hello, Keene, New Hampshire! Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Hope you had a great night last night. I know I did. Yes. Oh, a little soapbox. Let me jump on this.
There you go.
Let's give Steve Marchand another round of applause. Steve is a superhero here in New Hampshire. I know many of you know that. How many of you know that I went to high school here in the state?
Yeah.
Yes, Phillips Exeter Academy, 1992. And being back in the state now, it's been like a homecoming. I insist to the team we only listen to 80s and 90s music. So I feel like I'm reliving my adolescence. After I graduated from Exeter, I went to college in Rhode Island. Actually, let me stop there for a second. How many of you know a lot about me in the campaign? How many of you are just here checking it out because you saw some TV ad that we spent a lot of money on?
How about saw you at the debate, the last debate?
How about saw me at the debate or here for some other reason? But you still need to know more about Andrew Yang. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming out tonight. I'll give you my arc as to how I came to run for president, because certainly it was not the topic of conversation in the Yang household growing up. It wasn't like, oh, you're going to grow up to be president someday. That wasn't real. Parents were more like, keep your head down, get good grades. So I went to Exeter, I went to Brown University, I went to law school, became an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months. Excuse me. Hot cocoa.
Some water, man? Like,
Oh, thanks.
Talking a lot.
It was all the celebrating from last night.
It's all that champagne, for sure.
I don't know if you saw, we had someone serve as my stand-in.
Oh no, I was there.
Sam, he did well.
Sam, dude. He did so good.
Yeah.
Champ.
So I said anytime you wanted to buy me a drink, just buy one for Sam.
Can I have my
You got a lot of drinks.
Sam was a champ.
He did well. Yeah, I heard. Did he get home safe all right?
Yeah,
he's
I
all
believe
good.
so.
I'm glad. Don't even trip. So I left the law to start a business that did not work out. Had its mini rise and maximum fall. My parents told people I was still a lawyer. But I'd been bitten by the bug and tried again, and then became the head of an education company that grew to become number one in the United States and was bought by a bigger company in 2009. 2009 was a really tough time in a lot of the country. How many of you were here in New Hampshire 10 years ago? So you remember the financial crisis. How was the financial crisis here in the Keene area? It was bad. It was bad. You probably saw friends lose jobs. Some even might have lost their homes. And I thought I had some insight as to why the financial crisis had crashed the economy. It was because so many of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to Exeter and Brown and Columbia with had gone straight to Wall Street and created mortgage-backed securities and derivatives and these exotic financial instruments that produced, turns out, massive disasters for the rest of us. And so I thought that was an epic train wreck, and it made me very angry. The bailout of Wall Street made me very angry. You all remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout? No, none of us voted for that. You know, and like if we hit hard times, what happens? Like, oh, our fault. It's like banks hit hard times, it's like, here's $4 trillion. And to me, one of the biggest missed opportunities of that era was that we actually had a fundamental choice as a society at that moment, which was recapitalize the banks or keep people in their homes. And which do we choose? We chose the banks because we trust the banks more than we trust our people, apparently. So I had such a crisis of confidence in this. It was so shocking to me and disgusting. And I knew, again, some of the people involved. So I said, we have to try and create a better path for people that are going to do something productive and generative that starts a business and creates jobs in places like Detroit or Providence or Baltimore or Cleveland. So I quit my job at this point to start a nonprofit. How many of you all work in nonprofits? How many of you all volunteer for a nonprofit? You should just raise your hand to that one. I mean, that's like, are you a good person kind of question. It's like, sure. There was that one time. So this I give full credit to my wife because I was a pretty normal guy before this. Then at this point I say, hey, I want to quit my job, start a nonprofit. And starting a nonprofit, I'll tell you how you do it, at least how I did it. So I took some of our savings, put it down to start this nonprofit, and then started calling wealthy friends with this question: do you love America? And the smart among them said, what does it mean if I say yes to this question? And I said, at least $10,000. So 12 of them said, I love America for $10,000. So we raised that money and then go around trying to help businesses grow in cities around the country. And over the next 7 years that I ran this nonprofit, we helped create about 3,000 new jobs. I was honored by the Obama administration multiple times. I got to bring my wife to meet the president. So my in-laws were very excited about me for about a week. They were like, oh, she did all right. Check this out, look at this picture. But I had this real sinking feeling during the 7 years because I went to places and I felt like my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom. But things were getting worse, not better, in a lot of the country. But I was still stunned when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. How did you all respond that night?
Oh my God.
Despair, shock, grief, disbelief. Me too. I saw that, I said, okay, this is a giant red flag for our country. This is not business as usual. Tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. And though I was shocked, we all have family members and friends and neighbors who celebrated his victory. Oh, to me, again, you have to stop what you're doing, especially if you're, in my case, like this celebrated White House entrepreneur ambassador who goes around trying to make things better, and then, frankly, like a red flag goes up. It's like, well, it looks like what I've been doing for the last 6 years has not really been doing the trick. And if you were to turn on cable news networks, why would you think that Donald Trump won? Why would you think that he's our president today? Russia. Wow, he was upset too.
He was really upset.
Perfect timing. He said, that guy's our president, let's get him out of there by the time I can say president.
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice, yeah, he's very, very famous. He's been in our living rooms. The Electoral College. Emails. Racism, perhaps. Hillary Clinton.
Outsider.
Businessman, outsider. Yeah, all these things are mixed together. But I'm a numbers guy, and the numbers tell a very clear story. Where we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in this country over the last number of years. And where were those jobs based? Ohio, Michigan, Western Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And if you doubt this, there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting district and the movement to Trump in that district. It's one of the strongest correlations you can find in the voter data. And you all know this because this happened in New Hampshire a number of years earlier in the northern part of your state. You all lost more than 12,000 manufacturing jobs, and those towns never recovered. After the plant closed, the shopping district closed, the people started to leave, the schools started to shrink. I've been to those towns. No, I'm campaigning for president. I don't stop at this part of New Hampshire, I just keep going up. So, what happened, New Hampshire then moved to the Midwest, swept away all these communities. I've been to those communities too. They have not recovered either. And what happened to those jobs is now shifting to other parts of the economy. How many of you noticed stores closing where you live here in New Hampshire? And why are those stores closing? Amazon. Amazon's soaking up $20 billion in business every year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. That's your math, Keene. 20 billion out, zero back. 30% of your stores and malls closed forever. Most common job in your community is retail clerk. Average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. When her store closes, what is her next job? And it's not just the retail jobs. It's the call center jobs, the fast food jobs. You go and you see the kiosk, the CVS, and the grocery store. And eventually, most disastrously, the truck driving jobs. How many of you all know a truck driver here in New Hampshire? My friends in California are working on robot trucks that can drive themselves. And if you doubt that that's possible, a robot truck just brought 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago. Why butter? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, the reason why they're working so hard on robot trucks is because they believe they can save $168 billion a year on labor costs, fuel efficiency, equipment utilization, because the trucks never need to stop, never need to sleep, 24/7. You know, you can just get things there faster, and you don't need as many trucks. What is this going to mean for the 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States of America, or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal? Almost 10% of jobs in the state of Nebraska support trucking. So what happens when the trucks don't stop? Those communities dry up. What happened in northern New Hampshire then starts to spread throughout communities in the interior of the country. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our nation, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When is the last time you heard a politician say fourth industrial revolution?
Just now.
5 seconds ago. And I'm barely a politician. So these are the things that made me think, okay, I need to go to our leaders in DC and say, look, we're scapegoating immigrants for problems that immigrants are not connected to. They're like, if you go to these factories, it's wall-to-wall robot arms and machines, it's not wall-to-wall immigrants. We need to help our people manage this transition. And what do you think the folks in DC said to me when I said, how are we going to help our people manage this transition? Yeah, that was a popular one. Number one, learn to code. Yeah. Number one was we cannot talk about this, Andrew. Number two was we should study this further. And number three was we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future, which we've all heard at some point. But then I said, look, I took a look at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs? 0 to 15%. They're total failures. In real life, half of the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs left the workforce and never worked again. And then of that group, half filed for disability. You then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in those communities to the point that now America's life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years in a row. Last time America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row, the Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. That is where we are again as a country. Almost unprecedented. So when I said all of this to the folks in DC, they had nothing for me. Well, one person said something that brought me here to you all tonight. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about this because fundamentally this is not a town of leaders, this is a town of followers. He said this to me. I'm just glad I had someone with me because you think I was making that up, right? That sounds like some kind of movie supervillain speech. Instead it's a DC lobbyist speech. Turns out that they're related. It's like my brother's Lex Luthor. Anyway, so he said, you're in the wrong town. No one here's going to do anything. This is not a town of leaders, it's a town of followers. The only way we would do anything about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted, I'll be back.
There you go.
And that was 2 years ago, New Hampshire. And I'm here with you tonight to ask you to be that wave. To be the wave that reclaims our government, takes it back from the corporate interests that have completely overrun it, and rewrites the rules of this era to work for our kids, work for ourselves, work for our people, because they are not working right now at all. I love campaigning here in New Hampshire because you all are among the most powerful people in our country today. I know it doesn't feel like it. You just live your lives. And like, oh, another presidential candidate in town. Let me go check him out. It's New Year's Day. How much going on? Nothing on TV. But the power is real. I did the math. Do you know how many Californians each of you is worth? 1,000 each. That's right. So look around this room tonight. What's the fire code of our new office?
We don't ask that. We didn't ask.
100.
100. I can give you a Trumpian number. There are 800 people here tonight. It's the biggest office opening in America's history.
In the world.
Let's say there are 100 of us here tonight. That's like 2.5 football stadiums worth of Californians. That's the power here tonight, gathered. That's why it's such a privilege to campaign here. Most of our fellow Americans look up and they see our government pipes just clogged full of lobbyist cash, and they think there's nothing they can do about it. They just despair. They're right. There is nothing they can do about it. You are some of the only people in the country who can do something about it. It's up to you to flush the pipes clean. So if you want to flush the pipes clean, what does that look like? Number one, you take someone who has no corporate PAC money, is completely grassroots funded, does not owe anyone anything except to make the right decisions on behalf of us, the citizens of this country. Put them in Washington and then rewrite the rules so that we all benefit from this 21st century economy instead of the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks that are sucking us dry. I talked before, Amazon, this $1 trillion tech company, paid 0 in taxes last year. Does that seem fair to you all? No. Oh, and Jeff Bezos is worth $115 billion post-divorce. That's a bit of a dig. I mean, nothing against it. It's just a statement of fact. So you have to ask yourself, it's like, hey, how the heck does that guy's company pay 0 in taxes? Like, that does not seem fair, given that all of us are paying greater than 0 in taxes. And believe it or not, it is up to you and you alone to change that. DC's not going to change it, it's going to be up to you. Now, if you're here tonight, you heard at some point that there's a man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Remember hearing that? How many of you have heard that? Let's try that. Oh yeah, that works. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that on the TV ads, or I don't think I said that in the debate last time. I was talking about other things. Now, I know the first time you heard that $1,000 a month per person idea, you thought that's a gimmick, that's a joke, that will never happen in real life. But this is Not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of our country. He called it the citizen's dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrate every year, was fighting for a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans when he was killed in 1968. I had the privilege of sitting with his son in Atlanta, and he said this was the vision that his dad was fighting for. 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, the patron saint of libertarianism, endorsed this in the 60s. It was so mainstream that Richard Nixon proposed this plan, and it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971. It's called the Family Assistance Plan. And then 11 years later, one state actually passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
And how do they pay for it?
Oil.
And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, software, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? We laugh, but if our data is so valuable and they're profiting to the tune of tens of billions of dollars,
Of course, I understand. Babysitter, I get it. Of course you can. Babysitter, oh, sure. Yeah, it's all right. How many parents here? You know how it is. It's all right. I got you. You got a baby in?
We're stealing you from everybody. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I just wanted to.
Thank you.
He knows how to look at the camera. That's pretty cool.
how cute was that kid?
Wow.
How many other parents like me? We have to make sure that we leave a country we're proud of to our kids, because we have left them an awful mess thus far. And that's what this dividend is partially about. So, if our data is so valuable, and we're not getting the money, who is getting the money? Facebook, Amazon, Google, and these trillion-dollar tech companies that are paying, again, next to nothing in taxes. That's what we have to reclaim. If there's so much value being generated off of us and our data, then we should be getting that value. And if you put this $1,000 a month into your hands and the hands of our children, where does that money go in real life?
The economy.
The economy.
Right in.
How much of it would stay right here in New Hampshire?
Almost all of it.
Not all of it. You might get your own
Almost
Netflix password instead of just passing the same one around. You're like, no, never. A point of pride. But most of it would stay right here in Keene, in New Hampshire. Would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and religious organizations. This is the trickle-up economy.
There you go.
From our people, our families, and our communities up. This would work. This would make it so that we actually feel confident in our kids' futures. The fact is, if you were born in the 1940s in the United States, first, congratulations, because that's pretty good. But if you were born in the 1940s, there's a 93% chance that you're going to do better than your parents. That's the American dream. That's what my family came here to find. If you were born in the 1990s, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and it's trending south very, very quickly. That's why Donald Trump is our president, and that's what you all need to change. That's one reason we feel so uncertain about our kids' futures, and that they feel uncertain about their kids' futures. Because it's true. Their futures are less secure and less stable than that of previous generations. But if you had $1,000 a month in your hands and in their hands, then we would all be able to find a secure path forward, and rural areas would also have a future where the kids don't feel like they have to leave that community or even that state in order to access the opportunities that they want to find. This is a vision that you can make real immediately, and only you. There is no other group of people. We have to stop confusing economic value and human value and take ownership of the fact that we are Americans and we have intrinsic value. Our kids have intrinsic value. It doesn't matter what the heck their standardized test scores or any of that other stuff that we've just sort of imposed on them. Like, we have to make the rules work for them. If the rules aren't working for them, the rules aren't working for us, and they're not working. And there's only one way to change it. This election is perhaps the only way to change it. And I know the rules aren't working for many families in part because my wife is at home with our 2 boys right now, one of whom is autistic. What is her work included in our economic measurements every day?
Zippo.
0. We know that's wrong. We know that her work is among the most important and challenging work that anyone does. And it's not just her, it's the caregivers and nurturers and volunteers and artists and other people in the community that are doing work that the market does not value. And I'm going to throw local journalism in that too.
Yeah.
Over 2,000 newspapers have gone out of business in this country because there's not revenue for them. And I would argue that local journalism is vital for a functioning democracy. You can't vote on things in your community if you can't even figure out what's going on in your community. So these are the things that we claim to value most highly, like our families and our loved ones and our communities. But the market is turning on each of them more and more. This is, again, the confusion between economic value and human value, where you look up and you say, oh, well, we'll pay lip service to that, but we won't actually invest in it. I've run companies and organizations, and there are 3 things you can do with your people. Number 1, you do nothing, and then they leave you typically within a year. Number 2, you tell them how great they are, and you don't do anything else. That works for approximately a year and a half to 2 years, and then they leave you. The only thing that works is if you compensate them fairly and give them raises. It's the only way they know that you actually value them and invest in them. That's what we have to do with our kids and ourselves.
Also let them think, let them innovate.
Yes, and let them do the kind of work that they actually want to do, instead of saying to a group of people that you all need to become coders. Like, what is that about? You know, maybe Americans don't all want to learn to code. So this is, again, a reclamation of our own society. If you have record high corporate profits, but your people are dying younger, which do you value? Instead of corporate profits and GDP as the measuring stick of this economy, we should be using our own health and life expectancy, the ability to retire with dignity, and my $1,000 a month would stack on top of Social Security, be the greatest expansion of Social Security benefits in history. Our kids and their success rates, clean air and clean water, mental health and freedom from substance abuse. This is how we should actually be measuring our own economic progress. And as your president, it will be my pleasure to go to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and say, hey, GDP, 100 years old, kind of out of date, beating us off a cliff. Instead, we're going to modernize it to include all of these things, and I'll present the real numbers to you all at the State of the Union each year.
Yes. How do you change the incentives at the top? The corporate America, the FDA, the CDC, the
Oh my gosh.
pharmaceutical industry,
The Federal
all those
Reserve.
people who are just controlling people and making them work so damn hard they can't even think about anything else.
Yeah, there are so many things that we have to do, but it starts with getting the boot off of our own throats. Because right now, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Almost half can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. So then you're just left scrambling from island to island. You put $1,000 a month into every person's hands, all of a sudden the fog will lift, and we'll be able to make better decisions, investments in ourselves, orient ourselves. And then you have to go get corporate money out of DC. You have to break the revolving door between DC and lobbyists. I went to Exeter with a friend who went to Capitol Hill for good reasons, and he hated lobbyists when he got there. What do you think he is 16 years later?
Lobbyist.
A lobbyist. We all know how that story ends. So this is what we have to change. But it starts with being able to activate our people and get our own heads up. A lot of the Democrats are talking about, and they're not wrong. It's like, hey, corruption, break it, overturn Citizens United. That's not wrong at all. But equally important is what you do with the resources that are getting pumped to DC right now. Washington, DC today is the richest city in our country. What do they produce? Lobbyists, actually. They take well-intended people and turn them into lobbyists, and that's worth a fortune. So we have to not just stop doing some of the bad, we have to give ourselves and our kids and our own communities the genuine freedom to have our heads up and make the decisions, and to reinvigorate our communities with the businesses and pursuits that we actually value and need. And that should not be the government determining it. It should be us, based upon the decisions we make every single day. So this is the vision that you all can and I believe will take to the rest of the country in just 6 short weeks. It's such a joy to be here with you all, because in most of the country, we had this kind of conversation, people would be like, that sounds fantastic, but like I can't do anything about it. And again, they're not wrong. Only you can do something about it. Donald Trump is our president today because he had a very, very simple argument. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response?
America's already great.
America's already great. Remember that, New Hampshire? It's been a very long 3 years. It's about to end, though. Hillary's response wasn't right because the problems are real. We do have a lot of suffering in our communities. Many Americans are being left behind. We have a mental health crisis. We have affordability crises across the board. But Donald Trump's solutions were not what we need as a society. What did he say? We're going to build a wall, we're going to turn the clock back, we're going to bring the old jobs back. New Hampshire, you know that we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century. We have to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. And I am the ideal candidate for that job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you, I love being here. Math is an acronym, and what does it stand for? Make America think harder, that's right, that is your job. It is your job to take this country not left, not right, but forward in 2020, and I know that's just what you're going to do. Thank you, New Hampshire, I love you all.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for being here. So Andrew's just going to do a quick press gaggle, and then we're going to set up a selfie line. So if you can have the line, if you're lucky, you're first in line right here. It's going to be starting here, and then you'll go right out the door after you get your picture. So bring your stuff with you. Thanks so much for coming.
Don, look in the corner. Look in the corner.
Oh, cool. That's your job, right?
Us, yeah.
Thank you. Really hardcore yesterday. I just feel like feel free to donate right now.
The man up there.
Sorry, I watched so where's the line for the selfie?
Yeah, so right here.
Started over there. Okay.
Yep.
What part of New Hampshire? I'm sorry. What part you mentioned, Sheriff? Where's your left?
Thank you, sir.
I said if you guys would like to donate, I know we're pretty tapped out after yesterday. You can donate right now using the yanggame.com donation link. All donations go directly to Andrew Yang, and we're giving away signed merch for every $5,000 raised through the link. In fact, we actually have 4 signed merch drops that we have to do tonight. So, if you're interested in that, feel free to donate. It goes directly.
Alright guys, gotta do a quick press. Sorry.
Steven, no. Okay, we're gonna put over here. Steven.
Oh, Fox is
No.
here. Oh, my bad. Who else is here? Oh, they're all
I'm
here.
Canadian. I don't do this shit.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was just you, VIP.
Me too. It's kind of hard for them to navigate.
I can take a VIP one. Excuse me. Higher too. We're not.
I'm a huge fan of high-speed rail in particular. The problem is a lot of the country,
you guys
it's not optimal for high-speed rail. A lot of it. So you're more likely to have autonomous electric cars.
I thought the Hyperloop could also be used for water.
I gotta take it for a quick question, but I think you're right. Sorry, I got to put on my camera. Yes. I'm sorry.
I'm happy to get started. You made a comment before that you can't just train everyone to be campaign programmers, and what seemed to allude to something that former Vice President Joe Biden said the other day. Do you feel that comment was out of touch?
I get along very well with Joe, but I think it's completely unrealistic and unproductive to even recommend that all Americans learn the code or all former coal miners learn the code. The reality is that only 8% of Americans work in STEM fields today, and it's not realistic to suggest that the other 92% somehow join that 8%. We need to instead be thinking about what kind of opportunities people want to do, not what the market suggests that it has a need for. We need to think about a trickle-up economy and not an economy based upon a narrow conception of what has value.
Do you feel that any candidate has answered that specific problem other than you?
Well, I'm excited to have more of them voice their opinions as to what the best approach is, because it's the fundamental problem of this time, that many communities are losing their economic purpose and being left behind. And if you go to towns and say, hey, we give you high-speed broadband, then you'll all have jobs, it's also nonsense. High-speed download videos faster. So, to me, the answer is obvious, that we need to put the gains from the 21st century economy directly into people's hands and then reconstitute the businesses and jobs and opportunities in those communities based upon people's own needs and values. I'm excited to have other candidates join me in this thinking, because suggesting retraining that has been demonstrated to be ineffective is actually doing our people a disservice.
You have been campaigning.
Yeah.
You have been campaigning really hard. You had 5 events today, you have 3 today. Has campaigning been getting harder? Your voice has been getting heavier. You've been talking a little
What do you
more.
suggest?
I think there's something really interesting about where this is probably not going to be a conversation in the media at all. But it can be for some candidates. And I wonder if that goes through your mind at all, the dynamics of that experience.
It does, honestly. I mean, I enjoy campaigning, and no, this is an invigorating time. But there is a lot of humanity involved, and sometimes when I look at other candidates and their schedules, I feel like I have a keener awareness of what that schedule actually means, because, you know, it's not like you teleport from place to place and then you sit in a rental car most of the time. So I admire the other candidates in part for this reason, because I think running for president is much more of an exertion than many people realize, particularly being away from your family for long periods of time.
One more, guys. Trump has taken a strict stance against vaping, but he has walked some of that back, and he's going to lessen some of the regulations that he promised. What are your thoughts on vaping and then the power of lobbyists to be able to influence him that way?
Well, it's clear that we need to address vaping to a higher degree, because you have kids that are being injured, becoming sick, and even dying. And a lot of the sourcing of the products has been not properly vetted and investigated by the FDA regulatory bodies. So I'm glad that we're moving in the right direction. I think an outright ban would be extreme, but we should certainly be regulating the products much, much more heavily.
Thanks, guys. We're going to take them real quick. We're going to do some selfies. Love you guys. Thank you.
It's all great to see you all.
Yes, feel better.
The water's in that one. Okay, sorry.
Thank you for waiting.
I got one.
Yeah, right. Besides a math ass.
You did a great job, bro.
I'm on the New Hampshire, anyway, I'm Massachusetts.
What's up, bro?
You're live on the Zach and Matt show.
Oh, what happened to the stream?
This is
Let's
Okay.
do Streamception.
Streamception.
Yeah.
Yeah, including me. I want
People need to be in the room here. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, ready, guys? Look this way. 1. Here we go. 2, 3. Yay! Look at the claw. One more. Got it.
Go that way. Thank you. We'll make it happen. Move. What's happening? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, move. Yeah. Over there. Together.
Just 2 and then a family.
It was his people.
The next, right?
All right, y'all come back.
There we go.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Got it. Are you guys ready to jump right out? I'll get one to say. Here we go. Family photo. 1, 2, 3. Can you go back a little teensy bit?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, come on.
Inspiring to see.
Yeah, but try to not do anything with that. You know how you're like, oh, you messed up and you go back, I'm like, please. Right, like, be careful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys. Nice to meet you as well.
Oh, she's got mine. I like how you guys have this figured out. Good. Can you go to every family reunion, every Christmas? Hi, I went to the Keene Stanley, you walked right by me. Yeah, I thought she was.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for all you do. Yes. No, but I did actually have on my birthday a goat show up because it's fun to do different costumes. No kidding, the thing was amazing. And I'm like, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So good to see you. Nice work, guys.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Do we have an extra phone? Oh, there was a phone. Did we ever find the owner of that phone?
No, we don't have the owner yet.
Okay, who's phone?
Where is it?
Who's in?
Yeah. I gotta be the bad guy.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Let's get a pic. Good to see you, Robert.
Get together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Just give it to me.
That's the hat. I mean,
Okay, yeah. All right, we'll see you in a bit.
got a space that came in.
Change to video.
Have one more. Get together. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Do that one, I'll do this one. You do that one, I'll do this one.
Is it okay if would it count if I wore a tie and then there was a picture of it on social media? I don't know. I gotta move. Yeah, sorry. I tried to wear a tie to the debate and everyone Maybe. I'll take that into account.
Hey, Brian, nice to meet you.
Wow. I'm going to use this one?
You're
This
great.
one? 1, 2, 3.
That is hilarious. 1, 2, 3. Got it.
Thank you. Let's sign this real quick. That was a better guy, but you're winning me over. No, we'll keep that. Next time I see you. Thank you. Good luck. Okay, thank you. Next.
I won't
Next.
stop on your Here we go. So you want to go to there again?
Okay,
Remember the
thank
conversation
you.
well.
I read it.
What did you think?
She's just going to ask a question.
Yeah, it's true. First two days, right? Is it Jay Wade?
We need to keep a movie, okay?
Okay. So good to see you in person.
For him, right? Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Excited.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. What is up?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys. 2 and 1.
Get together.
Come on in.
Whoa. Okay, thank you.
There are currently 629 of you still watching this, so you guys must be some of the most dedicated Andrew Yang fans out there, or you're just having fun while you're in the chat. But either way, We're going to be posting a link right now, and you can donate directly to Andrew Yang through the link. We're going to be dropping signed merchandise every $5,000 donated through the link. In fact, tonight, we are going to have 4 signed merch drops, including because we hit $50,000 raised for Andrew Yang yesterday. We're going to be dropping a hoodie, 1K special edition Donald Glover hoodie signed by Andrew Yang. If you guys would like to participate and unlock even more merch, we are currently at about $63,000, and our goal is to raise $100,000. I actually know what the end of Q4 total is, but I cannot share with you all. Sorry. Anyway. Okay. But how about this? I'll share the total with you all if we hit $100,000 tonight. Bang. But that's not going to happen, so I don't have to tell you all. Because if I told you, I just can't. I will ask Zach a question.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Don't tell anybody about it tomorrow.
Alright, I got the answer, but I'm not going to tell anyone. Because that was what I was just told.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Great seeing you. Thank you for being here. What's up, man? Hope you don't hate that. It's a big weekend. You guys can get it next year. We probably will. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How's it going, Mr. Yang? Doing good, doing good.
Okay.
Thank you. I heard you got pulled over on your Twitter feed. Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, have a good night, Miss.
Hi. Thanks. Good to meet you. Can I have a selfie? She's a Democratic delegate. Okay, are we done? Yeah, good?
That's good.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I really believe in your dividend thing. They did it in Ontario for a while. And it works great. The Conservatives have shut it down. The thing is, the Democratic delegate hopes to get to the I am a Democratic delegate. You know what? I mean, I can tell you, I used to work as a public affairs communications analyst and policy analyst in Canada. Anyway, it has been.
If you guys would like to see more big code guy tweets, leave a donation right now to Andrew Yang through the yangang.com link. For every donation, I will know my one number. Donation has to be $100 or more.
Alright, $100 donation.
Just get the nomination, you know?
Don't you worry, we're gonna win. Okay. We're gonna win.
I'm a delegate in Massachusetts. I'm on the side.
Yes!
Again.
Together?
No, one second.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to go back to New York and wish you all the best and pick up your health. Until level one. Yeah. I probably should.
I take a lot more.
This is the simulation where we win. Yeah, have
Guys, that is Will Lexing's father.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's so cool.
I'm Danny again. This is for a sorority event that we're doing in Iowa, Katie and I made these for everybody. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I get there on Saturday. I don't need it. I have
Thank you.
With the Andrew Yang. Oh, that's fine.
You make it look so good, Andy.
Thank you very much.
That's not meeting All right. Okay, good. You guys.
How'd it go? Making it.
I might make that a priority. So, just think of it like this.
We're gonna try not to stop.
Alright guys, come along, we gotta take Scott, Eddie. Your last name, Eddie? Hello, sir. Okay, good. Do I get the car? Okay. Hey, will you take the stuff? Not the water bottle?
Hey, Zach. Yeah. Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Mark taking my picture.
That's what I was doing. Sorry, we gotta go.
You guys are ruining my New Year's resolution. Which was to let other people have attention and time with Andrew.
That's a terrible.
I was trying to share the wealth.
No, get greedy, baby. Get greedy. Yeah. Get greedy. Good. How you doing? Okay. All right, guys. Let's go. Come on. I gotta take it. Let's go.
That's not my fault. I've got
Okay. Sorry, guys. Someone's waiting. You guys. I met you at Francis Lake. Yes, I did. I love it.
Thank you, sir.
Wait. Wow. Let's do it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I just want to. Culture City. I gotta take him back to yeah! Oh, we're gonna get a picture. Yes! 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 Yes!
Oh, there, behind the wall. Watch out, Shane.
Come on in.
Cool. Can I get one with just Yang in front of it?
Yes,
too?
yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fine. Hang on.
If you want to say anything to him.
Thank you so much, teacher, for making this beautiful, beautiful mural. Let's make it prescient. Let's make it packed. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. It's awesome.
Gang, gang.
It looks like you. Thank you for your die.
Hey, can I get one on the live free or die, Andrew?
Oh, no, we gotta go, guys. Come on. Yeah, let's go. Come on, real quick. Yeah. Wow. Yes. Wow. Yes.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
Gotta go.
Not seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Peace, peace, peace.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there Matt?
I'm not sure who these are for.
Matt, who are these for? These are you?
Yep. Okay.
Then we love you, Matt. Here you go. That's
Love you too, Andrew.
Dos. Tres. Quattro.
Just three.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Matt.
You too, Andrew.
See you around.
Got it?
Again, one.
There they go. And see, that's what happens when you donate. You can win signed merch.
Too damn small. The one in Lebanon was too damn small. The one in Nashville was too damn small. The one in Exeter, all of them are too damn small. So we're gonna plan accordingly. And that, like, if you're a campaign with 6 weeks to go, you're either getting bigger or you're getting smaller. Nobody's flat. People either get drawn to you or they go somewhere else. And they're drawn to us in numbers that are 2, 3, 4 times what they were a month or two ago. My experience doing this is that's exactly what we need. The Yang Gang, the American people have been contributing crazy money. We raised $1.4 million yesterday. We raised $1.7 million in the first quarter. We raised $1.4 million yesterday. That's what we call growth. All right? Absolutely. So we appreciate all of you that are a part of that. We're going to do it again tomorrow. Yes, Yang Gang! Have a great day. Great meeting you, and thank you for that. Take this everywhere. I don't know, wherever it goes. It comes off the wall. So all right. Yeah. Right. Let's do it. Very good. Thank you, guys. Yes. All right. Hey.
Can I get a picture on the live free or die?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it. And then after that, I got a rule. If you're still here in 3 minutes, you're helping back in the floor.
All right. Here. Photo.
There you go. Yes! There you go. You want that? Yes. All right. There you go. There you go. Hold it 2 seconds. All right. Now. Something different every single day. All right. You say it, baby. I don't know how to do it. I can't get this. I'm glad I'm driving a truck. Yeah. I got to get my voice back.
Hey, you did a really good job.
Thanks for killing time. Killing time. 5 days. I'm not kidding. You feel like a god. Will's mother and father.
Yes. Yang Gang. Yes. Yang Gang. All the way. All the way.
This is the hype man right
yes.
here.
Thank you. Yang Gang. All the way.
Yeah, Zach. Hire Danny. I just want to say thank you guys for all the support. We're going to continue growing this thing bigger and bigger and bigger, and I couldn't be more motivated and excited to keep pushing this thing. So.
Yeah. Yang?
Gang!
Yang!
Gang!
Yo.
Yang? Gang! Yang! Gang!
The 46. Hey Danny, we need to add a 1 after each thing. Yeah, just the number 1.
Thank you.
No worries. If you can make that tea.
Yeah, I'll make it. I'll make it all nice. It's dry now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, press.
That's I should end it now. What do you think?
I'm trying to call Ted because
He's in a plane.
Yeah, but he has Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
Because our plan was to him to raid my Twitch channel.
Oh, okay. How do we do that? Okay, sorry.
I don't. Only he is the command.
Yes, we did it. Yo, Sean is the man. Yo, Sean is the man. This is Yang stream right now. All right. He got us this corrugated plastic sign thingamajigger for us to make this on because they wouldn't let us put it on the wall. But he came in clutch. We were gonna use some kind of BS cardboard, but yo, clutch, man. Do you want to say anything to the people in New Hampshire? He's out here in New Hampshire. About 300-400 people watching right now.
Right. 2020, we gotta do something every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every single day.
Every single day. That's my resolution.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yang, man. Let's go. Yes. This is. Yes, I just know where it's precisely. Yeah, okay. How's your trip to New Hampshire? And,
I'm going to talk to someone when I get back.
Yeah, but since then.
I was going to say, look, you might have to hire a team. I'm not kidding.
Talking to
You actually might have to have a hand.
Take a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is SoCal. I don't know who I got it from. It's different from the Will You Chang.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's you.
Yeah.
Some lady outside was like, "Yo, the Zach and Mac is here." The Zach and Mac show. I'm like, "Who's that?"
Huh?
I didn't realize that was you.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
And they were streaming over here, and she was looking at the show. She's like, "Wait, I know these guys."
Yeah.
That's why.
It's funny. Let's see. There's literally 475 people watching me stand right now.
You're a good stander.
Thank you. I think it's you. It must be you.
We got this done just in time, right before.
Will's brother, ladies and gentlemen.
Yang Gang.
What up, Yang Gang? Yo, how was your couple days?
I'm loving New Hampshire.
Yeah, first time?
Not my first time in New Hampshire. First time in New Hampshire for the Yang Gang.
Okay, sick.
It's always a good time with the Yang Gang.
Yeah, well, what was it like? How is it different compared to New York?
Oh my God, there's way more energy here, which I mean
Really?
makes sense. It's an early state, right?
Yeah.
This is where the focus of the campaign is.
Yeah.
Iowa, New Hampshire,
Yeah.
South Carolina, Nevada,
Yeah.
and the Super Tuesday states. New York's not until later, so we don't have as much stuff going on.
Yeah, but New Yorkers, if you watching, you need to get your ass to New Hampshire.
NYC,
and knock on
you gotta
some
wake
doors.
up,
It's not even that
NYC.
far. It's like 4 hours, man. Get out of here.
New Hampshire right now.
Yeah, why are you not in New Hampshire right now? Huh?
Come on, stream.
The best of us.
It's an easy
What the
drive.
hell?
Yeah. Wait, where is? Did you get the Ari? I think his name was. The kid who's coming from Massachusetts, an hour and a half away.
No.
He's my hero.
Who?
Ari?
I don't know who Ari is, but.
Ari comes to Canvas every single
Oh,
day.
from Massachusetts. Yo, hey, this is Yang Stream. Yo, tell them about yourself and what do you do here?
I work in the office office in Keene. I'm
In
the
Keene?
field organizer. I help do all this stuff. We
Yes.
canvas and we phone make every day.
Yeah.
No, Ari's our superhero.
Yeah.
He drives from Massachusetts
Wow,
every day.
wow.
And today he brought friends to hang
Yeah.
out and do. They canvassed this morning.
Wow.
And they helped us run the event.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Sick. So, what would you have to say? Like, was there anything different about the energy, like these past couple days, compared to what's been going on, like the last week or 2 weeks? Yeah.
Like-
what's the difference?
I don't know. Like I've been to 5 events
Yeah.
in New Hampshire in the
Yeah.
last few months. They started small. There was crowds, whatever, excitement. The speech happens. People are like, yeah, Newton, Nebraska. But everybody said it today.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And we filled a room. A very small room.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys want me to take questions from Steve Martian?
Huh?
Oh.
Hey,
can I ask you a question? Could you just explain the importance of phone banking and text banking?
Sure.
Because so many people I see, they don't know if it's worth their time or if it's the best strategy to reach voters.
Sure. It's actually one of the most valuable resources because canvassing does a job, phone banking does a job, and text banking does a job. Because sometimes with the media blackout and all that other stuff, people don't hear about it, and we love to get that word out, and we just want to a lot of the time it's not convincing. It's a lot of the time just giving information because as much as you want to convince someone, it almost works better if you just say, I really support Andrew Yang and I want to tell you why, and then they can do the same thing, form their opinion and all that stuff. It's really great.
Awesome. Thank you for all your work here. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Flying to Iowa to help. Awesome.
All right, well, that's good.
Thank you.
You guys want me to ask Steve Martian for some questions? I need them submitted in the chat. Questions for Steve Martian. Insert them in the chat now. Questions for Steve Martian. Serious questions only. Put them in the chat. One of the most senior campaign staff here in New Hampshire, if not the most senior, behind the state director, Christina. What's next? The stream's about to end, that's what's next. And then I left my keys in my car and locked my keys inside the car, so that might be a problem. How often do you shave your head? Alright, so here's the schedule. Tomorrow, Ted didn't answer me, so if you're ready to end it, just end it. But tell him, here, let me do my outro real quick, and then tell those people to flip over mine. All right, so tomorrow, there's 3 Andrew Yang events tomorrow here in New Hampshire, and we're gonna be covering them all live here on the Zach and Matt Show. And all you have to do is click the stream when it pops up tomorrow. And that's it. Hope you guys had a great stream. Let's find, Hey, Frank, can you give us an outro?
What?
An outro for the stream before I turn it off?
So, guys. Yeah. So, in closing, this is something that I want to talk about right now, okay? So, we have 2 types of people in the Yang Gang right now.
This is Matt, by the way.
Okay? So, it's your choice which type of person you want to be, right? So you have people that focus on the scoreboard or people that focus on the playbook. So the playbook is where the work is being done. The scoreboard is where people are whining and crying about the polls and this, that, and the third. It doesn't matter what they do. It matters what we do. Does that make sense? Hello?
Yeah, I'm gonna check.
Yes, Yang Gang.
Be
Right?
fucking nice.
Be fucking
Be
nice.
nice to everybody.
Yeah, that's how you get shit done.
Be nice, because you cannot change hearts and minds if you're mean.
All the trolls in the chat are about to explode.
Do it. Listen to me. The
Hey.
best way to change somebody's mind is to be kind and to understand and acknowledge their feelings. And when you do that, then you can change their feelings. But if you're a jerk, it's not nice. And you shouldn't do it. And I'm gonna come after you.
Yes, she will crush you.
Yeah, so,
Don't mess with her.
So we have two types of people. The choice is yours. Whether you wanna playbook or focus on
BS.
the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The scoreboard doesn't matter because the scoreboard is saying that Joe Biden is an actual real candidate. You know what I mean? So we know the scoreboard's off.
Yeah. Yo, Yang Gang, I'll see you when I see you. Whoever.
Yo, Yang stream.
Out.
If you would like to follow
Yeah,
along
see you when you see you.
my
and
difficulties
we
of
wish you we could
unlocking
be
my
you.
car, go over to the Zach and Matt
Go
Show
to Zach
channel
and
on
Matt
Twitch.
Show. Go to
On
Zach
Twitch.
and
On
Matt
Twitch.
Show on Twitch.
On Twitch.
Yeah, it's
Hey,
about to. It's
are
about
you
to go
gonna
live. It's live right now.
eat
So,
with us?
yo, peace out.
Well, I
peace
locked
out.
my keys in my car.
They're bringing food here, like 10 minutes.
All right, so if you guys are interested, I'm going to go over on the Zach and Matt Show Twitch channel, and I'm going to end this stream. So everyone have a safe, good, great night, or if you live somewhere else, have a great day, whatever it is. We'll see you back here tomorrow in New Hampshire.
Hey, no, let's just go.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Peace.